here at Silicon Beach again, I'm with Pete Trainor, who is the founder and director of human-centered design at the data company Nexus.
Yeah.
And so could you tell me a little bit about what that involves?
We were talking about this earlier. I'm not sure we're a data company. We're a kind of design data company. What does it involve? We're trying to use data to drive design ambitions. Is kind of what we're doing. So why don't we're trying to look at actual behaviours of people from data, mainly generated on phones, and then say, well, that's how they're behaving. What do we design for that, rather than creatives sitting around dreaming up an idea, allegedly, and then trying to retrofit, the capture to that. So we're kind of, I guess, we're reverse engineering the way that we've done stuff. Well, I've certainly done stuff for the last 20 years in a much more human-focused way by using data. Yeah. And the hope is to start designing less stuff. So designing only what is necessary to enrich a person based on the information that we've been collecting off them via their phones or whatever.
So with data, people very often think of it just as a very dry, geeky kind of area, but you're using it to generate real human insights and real human understandings. How do you get useful human insights out of data, and then what opportunities does that give you?
Yeah. So we're doing a lot of work. We've been doing a lot of work with kind of analytics. So it sounds kind of obvious when you talk about data, but the way that you give data back to people has to be incredibly human as well. So, we're trying to help revisualize what analytics looks like. So can't be graphs and numbers, because people like us don't understand what that means and how I can apply that to my actual life. So we're trying to think of creative ways to reapply data back to an individual, back to a company, so that they can do better things with it. So we're doing a lot of, we are doing a lot of work in AI, purely, not because it's a shiny, zeitgeisty thing at the moment, just because it's good at generating insight from large unstructured portions of data, and then trying to work out from the data that's being, the analysis that's being done by the AI is kind of like what we do with that. And you need a human, really, to tell you what to do with that. We had this really fascinating thing. We keep pairing up random people. So I put a psychotherapist and a data scientist together to try and look at patterns and solve problems. And then that's really fascinating when you suddenly get a very psychological point of view and a very analytical point of view on the same topic, on the same problem. And so coming at everything from both angles with different people with data is a really fascinating way of trying to solve problems.
So could you give an example of maybe an insight that you've found through data and how you've turned that into something?
Yeah, so one of the things that we did, so we used social media analysis on suicide notes to try to determine whether there were key markers and patterns in the way that people were writing or the things that they were writing in suicide notes. Now we did a piece of analysis on the suicide notes of men who'd threatened suicide but didn't go through with it, and the men that had threatened suicide and actually done it. And we found one pattern in the analysis, which was sense of burden. And that was the only thing that was distinguishing across the board of those that threatened and did and those that threatened and didn't. And that was through data analysis, the kind of data analysis that we use on social media to work out, what people are saying about a brand and why they're saying it and all that cynical stuff. And we're just using exactly the same tools to do things like that. So that's a really good example. And then once you've worked out that those are some of the behavioural markers, the patterns that trigger, could be an indication of somebody, who's about to do something, sad and bad to themselves. If you start to look for that sense of burden in social media or in, email patterns or whatever it is, things that you have permission to look at, then maybe you could start to help these people way in advance of them actually doing themselves harm, is the thought. So we've been taking really tough issues, things that are affecting families and human beings all over the world, and then trying to kind of reverse engineer quite a lot of the marketing tools or the analytics tools or the data tools that we've been using to sell stuff. And for me, that's a good example of how we've kind of flipped analytics on its head to try and use sentiment in a completely different way for a completely different cause.
A wonderfully positive thing as well.
So yeah, it's worked. I mean, it's worked. It's been, yeah. I mean, it's tough. It's not perfect, but I think as a philosophy for a business, it's kind of fun as well. Like I'm all for not reinventing stuff, Like we could just take a bunch of stuff that's been used for something and use it for something better, and that's kind of neat. And I'm also I'm really positive that we can supercharge a lot of charities and NGOs and people that are trying to do really amazing things for society with the same tools that we've been using in marketing and big tech platform companies for decades and decades and decades.
So you've also recently brought out a book called Hippo. Could you tell us a little bit about that and why it's called Hippo?
Yep. And so the book was an accident. I'm a series of happy accidents as a designer. I'm really dyslexic, and so the idea of writing 55,000 words and putting it in a book seemed like a pretty cool thing to do, so I thought I'd give it a go. Hippo is a reference to the hippocampus, so the part of the brain that gets bigger and smaller depending on the kind of things that you do every day. So a bus driver, for example, has a much smaller hippocampus than a taxi driver, because a taxi driver has a very non-linear life and they make up their own adventures, whereas a bus driver is very linear. The book is very much a look at digital and how we're reducing the size of the hippocampus in a lot of people by making the world too frictionless, because we're creating effectively a society of bus drivers that are clicking buttons and getting taxis, or going online and finding the answer rather than actually having to study or work things out. So the book's been a great little adventure just doing it. It's about a world of entitlement rather than enlightenment. And that's kind of what the book is for, is I think a philosophical look at technology and design and digital.
So the idea that there's a hippocampus being where you store memories and spatial awareness, especially, and sort of pick up skills. There's been this rise of things like TED online that has become sort of very popular as people have been hopefully feeding their mind through it, not just occupying it by watching some stuff. Do you believe that that's an important ingredient for creativity, this feeding the mind thing?
Definitely. Definitely. I think, we should encourage our children, our colleagues, ourselves to be curious. And that's some of what digital, in a weird kind of way, is taken away, is, the innate curiosity of hunting for something or watching something that's educational or solving a problem. I think TED's for me has been it's a great library of insight, short bursts, 15 minutes, do it in your lunchtime, and then I love TED. It's a really great example, I think of. But that for me is a good example of lots of people encouraging enlightenment, and we should continue creating content like that, and we should continue putting content like that out in the wild to our children and blah blah blah, and probably focus less on frictionless functions and ease of use and things like that, which is kind of weird when you've come from a UX background like me to then suddenly turn around and start advocating difficulty in the world that we create. But I do believe that put a bit of friction back in is not a bad thing at all.
So you're mentioning a little minute ago there about happy accidents, and a lot of people think of creativity, what it should be about is it's very purposeful.
Yeah.
But you kind of embrace serendipity. How do you go about doing that?
I don't go about doing it, it just kind of happens, and that's the point of serendipity, right? But I've never been able to plot a course. I just hate it in big businesses where they say, okay, what's your career path look like for the next 3 years? I don't know, because I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what's going to happen in technology. I don't know what's going to happen in my personal life. I don't know. So by chance and accident, I think things emerge. I hope things emerge. So I've always followed the mood of a time and tried to modify what I do as a professional to the mood of a time, and then see what happens, who I meet, whether or not that leads to a piece of work or whether that leads to, failure, whatever it is. So serendipity, I think, is definitely something to embrace. It is quite a scary ride when you haven't really got a plot, but I keep moving forward, but I'd love just meeting random people and doing random things and turning around one day and going, oh, you know what, maybe we could use our analytics to solve suicide. Yeah. That's, and no one predicted that we were going to turn around and say that, and it's because I met somebody who inspired me. We've all lost somebody, and I say, well, let's just do that then. But that's, it's a series of inspirations that lead you to a new place.
So when you're coming up with ideas, and some of them serendipitous, some of them purposeful, one of the things that a lot of people find difficult is knowing if their idea is good enough. What makes a good idea? Is there a way of judging ideas to know that this one is better than that one?
Yeah, so we as a business and as an individual, we're trying to kind of squash this idea of the KPI, like the key performance indicator of a product is this. It's like, actually what I'm going to judge an idea on is how it makes me feel. Like that's a really good indicator of if an idea is good or not, is whether it moves people, whether they lean forward in their seat, whether they're interested. Is it solving an actual problem, or is it creating a new type of problem? An idea for me is a good idea when it's a better version of something new rather than a better version of something that already exists, if that makes sense. So an idea is only as good as its resonance with the people that you're trying to solve the problem for. And I think there are a lot of people who are trying to solve problems that don't exist. And that's the other thing about a good idea or an idea is it a problem that needs to be fixed? And if it's not, then just don't do it. And again, one of the themes in the book is encouraging designers and technology people to constantly ask the question, why? Like, why? Why are we doing that? Why are we selling that? Why do we think people need that? Why? Like a kid. And if you can answer all the whys, then you've got a good idea. Yeah. Because it's something that needs to be done and not something that, somebody has decided should be done.
And going back to, you were talking about AI and the sort of whole cognitive computing thing. People in companies, a lot of them are just kind of a little bit aware of it, mm-hmm. and a lot of them go for the science fiction terror approach of it. What is actually the business opportunity, you think, for people to use that kind of technology within their company? Yep.
So, I mean, AI is a dangerous space at the moment, mainly because a lot of people don't understand what it is. We've always looked at it as an optimization tool. It's a really good way of, refining a business's process or analyzing large amounts of data, predicting or preempting a behavior and doing it first. For businesses, AI is just a really good way of reducing calls or, skipping the navigation using a more intelligent cognitive-based search. The opportunities for business are in optimization of their business. It's not about losing jobs, it's not about replacing people, it's not about suddenly having a robot running a business, because that's not going to happen. You still need people to train it, you still need people to teach it what to look for, you still need people who are basically putting the kind of the smarts behind the AI, and that takes people power, like somebody's got to create it. So I think we're definitely a long way off Terminator. That's not going to happen for a while. But I think there are a lot of businesses that misunderstand that. They think it's a silver bullet. They go, oh my God, like everyone's talking about AI on Twitter or on Business Insider or whatever, like we need to do that. And well, maybe you don't. Maybe it's only as good as the problem you're trying to solve with it. And if you're doing it for a business purpose and not a problem-solving purpose, then just don't do it.
So I know you need to run for a train. So at this point, I'll say thank you very much indeed. That's fantastic.
Thanks. No makeup, nothing. Work in these conditions.